One thing that we verified, and I did this as the director of the Depleted Uranium Project for the U.S. Army, years after we came back from combat operations, I'd go to different Army installations or facilities, and I'd absolutely find the contamination there. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't go away. You know, one of the things that we came up recently, you know, again, another major lie, is that all this oil that spilled out of this ruptured oil well down the Gulf somehow disappeared. Magically, it disappeared. That's pure nonsense. It was dispersed or it settled out, but it's still all there. And it's causing a medical disaster, and it will cause a medical disaster. And that's what we have with depleted uranium. So we have all of that. When we continue on with all this stuff, the internal briefings, and again, I think that you've been able to post this, the Wakayama briefing. And Colonel J. Edgar Wakayama did a briefing for the Pentagon and senior leadership prior to start of the current individuals, you know, Operation Desert Storm led into what we now call Gulf War II. They totally confirmed all the health problems. Totally confirmed it. But at the same time, going back to 1991, and you've got this where you can post, I had the Los Alamos Memorandum, which was a direct order to lie on all of our reports to maintain proponency and sustain the use of uranium munitions while avoiding all liability for the health and environmental effects. Alex, when you think about it, a direct order to lie, but that matches what we found now about the syphilis Tuskegee study, and what has been, just in last week we found out about the definite stuff down in Guatemala.
It just shows how incredibly ruthless they are. This is not by accident from all the evidence we have. This is a program of eugenics and population reduction.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things that I learned in the military from 40 years, and I had to come to grips with it, is when I really learned what we do and how we deal with it, what decisions do I have to make? And you come up to the ethical and moral domain. You know, we have to do what's right. We can't allow the use of this stuff anymore. We have to clean up the environment. We have to provide the medical care. And so when I wrote the requirements for the U.S. military, and we did the research for them, and wrote the requirements, so you have to understand the Army Regulation 700-48, the pamphlet, the modification to the 1990 version of TB 1913, 278, 1996 version. We did that all based on solid knowledge. And so what you'll see today, and I had inquiry earlier today from Europe, and they were saying, well, they're still saying we need more research. We don't know. Wait a minute. The Army regulation requiring thorough environmental remediation and medical care, the orders for medical care, have already been written. That's because the decision was made this stuff is so nasty we can't use it. And once we do use it, we have to provide the medical care cleanup, but they just totally ignore it. So we look at all of these incredible things. Air, water, soil, and food contamination, water contamination. In Europe now, one of the concerns we have is the contamination from the Middle East is getting up into Europe, is going to affect the milk and water supplies. It's going to get in the food stream, to get right into the whole food stream. We absolutely know the contamination has reached from the Middle East, that's Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia. We absolutely know it's reached Northern Europe and into Great Britain. We know the contamination throughout the United States is transferred all over. We know the contamination from Vieques, Puerto Rico, reached the main island of Puerto Rico.
That's right. They've got radiation testing facilities all over the world, and every time a new war kicks up, the testing facilities in England and others pick it up that far away because the jet streams carry that stuff around and around the world.
Yeah, when I was down in Vieques, we were doing the investigation on Vieques, Puerto Rico, this some years ago. Obviously, you know, they were concerned, and they asked me to come down there, and I started working with them, and God bless those guys down at Vieques. I mean, Bob Ribbon, Nelda Bettino, I mean, these are incredible people that have been trying to do their work. We were literally airborne, and the military is firing this stuff on the range on Vieques, and we're watching the clouds come up from the range where they're firing it, going over to the main island of Puerto Rico. We just literally watched it from the air. It frightened me completely.
Well, we have opened up our phone lines because of audio issues or whatever it is. So we're getting Danny, Dante, Noah, Jason, and others. Only military callers or families of military affected by DU. We're going to take your calls nonstop in this next segment and right through into the next hour. This is important information. The toll-free number, if you're specifically on this issue and have been victimized by this or denied care, 888-201-2244. Jason in Germany and others, give us a call. Back, 888-201-2244. And we will get you up and on the air, 888-201-2244. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Dr. Doug Rokke, Dr. DU. Danny, welcome, sir.
Thanks, Alex. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. I have a question for Dr. Rokke. I went to basic training in AIT at Fort Leonard Wood up in Missouri, and where we used to always do our road marches and everything was right next to this big field where we would sit there and watch the A-10 Warthogs come in, blow up the tanks, and we were walking right next to it. And then after I got out of the Army in about 97, right after that I was diagnosed with sarcoidosis.
Diagnosed with what?
Would that be related to the depleted uranium?
What was the diagnosis?
It was non-caseating granulomas, and they called it sarcoidosis. It was it would swell up my lymph tissue around my lungs and made it where I couldn't breathe, basically.
Congratulations.
And nobody could ever tell me what it was. I thought it was the chemtrails, but you were on before and you said that they had respiratory illnesses, and I was wondering if that could have been what it
every
was.
one of those, how much do each one of those Warthog bullets weigh, sir?
3/4 pound and 4,000 rounds per minute when they're fired with DU. The calcified granulomas and everything in the lungs is exactly what's happened to me. Taken out 40% of my respiratory. Again, that was totally confirmed and totally acknowledged as far back as 1973 and 1974 after the Israelis used it against the Egyptians. That's where I used that medical evidence to get my disability from the VA.
And so that's a death sentence to have them march around a proving ground while warthogs with their Vulcan cannons blow the daylights out of old tanks.
With DU, absolutely. I mean, you're not supposed to. It's not. First off, DU is not supposed to be fired. Was never supposed to be fired any place within the United States or any place except on a direct combat engagement in a combat action. It's not supposed to be used any place. That's a requirement, but that's totally ignored. And then the requirements. I mean, we've already gone over very specific requirements. Once it's been used in combat, wherever you're at, you're supposed to get the immediate medical care.
Is there anything Danny can do for this attack on his lungs?
Well, yeah, he goes back to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, and Dr. Victoria Casano, who is the Director of Environmental Services for the VA, she has copies of all the orders and regulations. She understands that because I faxed everything directly to her staff, and I've talked to her personally, and they're required to give him medical care, full medical care. The respiratory effects from DU are confirmed. They're confirmed in the Wakayama briefing. They're confirmed in everything else.
And we're posting all those documents at Infowars.com. Does that answer your question, Danny?
That does. That gives me somewhere to start. I've always wondered what it was, where it came from, and now I know where to start. Nobody else would ever have any information on it.
God bless you, sir. Let's talk to Jason in Deutschland, joining us from Germany. Jason, go ahead.
How you doing, Alex? Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, just like a little background first. I was in a mechanized infantry battalion in Desert Storm, and we were involved in combat, and we used quite a bit of the DU rounds. I mean, we used them out of the Bradley guns because they were so effective. We found that out very quick, and coming up now on the 20th anniversary of it, we're trying to arrange a get together, and through various social networking sites and what have you, we're trying to get in contact with everybody who's in the unit. What we're finding out is about 20, 25, 30% of the guys are already dead, and they've died of upper respiratory, lung, digestive problems, cancers, and what have you. And I don't think you could take any population of the guys who were 18 to 23 years old back in 1991 and find out that many have died of similar diseases.
Yeah, you're not supposed to have 20, 30% dead at 40. Stay there. I'm going to come right back to Jason in Germany with Dr. Doug Rokke as we start the live fourth hour, transmitted on AM and FM, global shortwave, satellite, and the internet at Infowars.com. We'll be right back in 70 seconds. Free audio streams. But today we're doing this fourth hour free video streaming. The link just went live at Infowars.com if you want to see what goes on at PrisonPlanet.tv. We're testing it for the 24-hour plus live broadcast coming up Thursday. We're going to attempt, if our servers can handle it, to broadcast the entire 24-plus hour transmission at PrisonPlanet.tv. Now, going back to Dr. Doug Rokke, hearing Jason in Germany, who we're going back to in a moment, where he said over 20% of his unit, and they were 20-something years old when they were there just 20 years ago, or 19 years ago, are dead. And that's the numbers you've gotten from the VA. That's very similar. So this is what the globalists think of the troops that serve. And don't forget, in all tyrannies, they hate their military and police the most, and they want to decommission you. So they love the fact that you're using soft-kill weapons, so after you get out and are older and become wiser, but have combat experience, you're so debilitated you can't resist their takeover. Dr. Rokke, what's it like hearing this from Jason?
Well, he's just confirming again what we already know. The United States Department of Veteran Affairs publishes the Gulf War Veterans Information System report. They quit publishing them back in 2008. In 2008, the number of Desert Storm in 2008, that's 2 years ago, over 2.5 years ago, that have died, was at 78,559. That's over 2 years ago. Now, the numbers are continuously going up. If you watch the ArmyTimes.com website or any other military, you realize these kids are dropping dead on a daily basis. When we look at the total number, we had 78,000 from Operation Desert Storm. Now, we're going to go back again. 2 years ago, the VA report, 1,129,340 individuals had gone over to Iraqi freedom and enduring freedom. As of February of 2008, that's 2 years ago, the number that had died of the people that went into the Gulf with Desert Storm 2, or what we call Gulf War 2 Iraqi Freedom 9, or Iraqi Freedom Enduring Freedom, is 170,408 had died. 170,000. Now, we know those numbers have gone way up. We know that the medical reports from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs for Operation Desert Storm, we have over 300,000. That's over 40% now have serious medical problems. We know from Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom that we're looking at close to 50% have also very serious medical problems. These are not related to bullets and bombs. These are all the toxic exposures, primarily uranium munitions.
And, Doctor, I know you could go forever on this. I want to get a comment back from Jason in Germany. Recap what you were saying and talk about what this discovery is like for you.
Well, I mean, throughout the last 2 decades, I've heard, through various contacts of guys who've had other problems with rashes and, persistent diarrhea, and we're talking like, years-long diarrhea. And, you kind of blew it off, I guess, because, you're a lot younger. But now when you're confronted with these numbers face on when you're trying to organize a reunion, it's pretty shocking.
Yeah, when you're 18 or 20, when you're 18 or 20 or 22 and you think you're bulletproof, and most young men think that, they love using you. They knew full well what they were doing. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we use this stuff extensively. I said it at the beginning. I mean, we fired off. I don't even remember. I mean, thousands of these rounds. I mean, they were so effective. And I mean, you had that choice or HE rounds, and everybody knew which ones destroyed the Iraqi tanks. So we used it. And you got out. You would dismount the Bradleys, and you would clear an area after the fact. And you weren't even thinking about what you might be breathing in back then. And now you find out that all your friends are dead. And it's very, very shocking and very discouraging that it's denied by the U.S. government, or at least ignored.
I'm hearing the same numbers out of the famed 82nd Airborne. My own cousin was a combat medic in the 82nd Airborne. And, again, they're also trying to put together, just like you said, a reunion. And he's coming up with 15 to 20% of his units all dead. That's what
we're running into. It's disgusting.
Jason, I want to let you finish up on the other side briefly with what this makes you think about this government and who's running this, and your warning to other military and police that serve the New World Order, satanic world government system. And there's no other way to describe it. If this isn't the devil, I don't know what is. We'll be back with more of your calls. Noah and others.